Hello, good evening for anyone who look into my video. I want to share some my daily finding today when I read an article in the internet, but I forget what the domain of this article, what this website's names. So I can share it with you. But this website specially talking writing about Western life in 19th century. It's very popular with a cowboy, as we know. It's very popular story about about American's hero at that moment, about the cowboy and all that about West Midwest in Western. They call it in the American West at that moment, right? And yeah, I read this story because I got my translation lesson this afternoon, and we must translate a story that it turns out about Western ways. It's about a cattle driver drive cattle from Texas into another states in the U.S. like Colorado, Missouri, and then there are Dakota and yeah, other states in Midwest like Nebraska and something like that, Wyoming and that something like that. It's very popular for cattle industry. I tell even till today because there are many farmland from there, so there are many processing milk melt from this midways of America. Yeah, it turns out that the story we know about the cowboy is kind of cool story, isn't it? When we look into the movie or the books or like a novel or other poems, we tend to looking at cowboy about men who ride horse and then they herd cattle, cows, and then they live very peaceful life, even though the weather's not really good because it's deserts mostly, and then it's very hot weather there, and the land not really fertile. But yeah, still they live in a peaceful life in the frontier of Western, mostly in the Midwest at that time, and then the popularity of this driving cattle in the Midwest in the Texas is because it's before the Civil War, but mostly the popularity of this cowboy after Civil War. This is probably a war between North and Southern states. I'm not really sure about it because I'm not really immersed into American history, even though our translation learn about American history mostly because when we come to learn English, especially into TOEFL ITP, we tend to learn about American because mostly the passage we read in the test, in the TOEFL test, mostly about American, whether it's story, politics, or something that related into American. Yeah. That's very interesting. It turns out that not as beautiful as we watch into the movie, that the Midways, the cowboy at that moment, live in very harsh condition. They even not get paid, from their master, from their company, from the business at that moment. And then, very hard to find foods because it's not a fertile land. And then also, they also sometimes have to going to fight with Native Americans who already lived there for like thousand years, and very not easy to live there. The At that moment, Texas had many cattle, but they don't really have enough money to sustain that country because at that moment, still not yet joined the United States, because Texas at the moment still the independent country, not joined into United States, and they don't have really enough money. But the country like Wyoming, Nebraska, and Dakota, they have much money but don't have enough meat. At that moment, there are still war going on, so they purchase this cattle from the Texas going into the north, and then they buy the cattle to to give people foods, and then probably to send these foods into war army, because at that moment still going on war in these regions, because in 19th centuries, like 1850s, something like that. And there is very interesting story I find about this history of cowboy. It turns out that a cowboy not really American culture. It's more like Spanish. It probably explains why it is happened from Texas, because I guess this is what I think that Texas, once upon a time, they joined with Mexico. Mexico under colonized by Spain before they joined into United States, and this is part of Mexico, I guess. But I'm not really sure about it. If you probably understand more about this American history, mostly about this cattle driving in the Midwest, you can tell me more about it, and I will be glad if you spend your time to to send an email or something like that. And yeah, after that, I'm not really sure where did this ended. It cannot happen like 100 years, I guess, and I don't not really know why this is ended, about this cat heading the cattle from the Texas into the north. I think it's because they can there are already many many carvings cattle in the north, like in the Midwest at the moment. So this is why Texas not really popular about foods anymore, about meats anymore. I took a translation class, as you know, that it turns out really hard to learn this translation class, because every day we learn about grammar very much, and very advanced grammar, mostly about reducing, which is kind of very hard to learn, because I don't really have a basic about this grammar, but I give it a try to to learn more about it. So probably I would become better. I think it's a good thing to learn something that very hard, more challenging, but give big reward too for us, because we when we learn something that very hard, we push our limit into something that bigger. We improve ourselves into the next level. It's very different when we learn an easy thing. So our knowledge only in that place, we don't really into the next step when it come to master the particular field in this in this case, in learning English. So it's very good for me when I took this translation class. Then I learned very much about about grammar, about reducing and conjunction, and very hard to learn, but yeah, I still try it. And then about the teacher, actually, my teacher kind of pretty old, and but he is can teach very interesting, even though they are kind of quiet there in the class, not really much humor, but I am pretty much okay with it. But it's just sometimes that very hard to understands the lesson, because it can only I don't know how to explain. I very hard to explain it, because it's kind of because it's very quiet, and we kind of it feel uneasy to ask question, because I don't really sure how to explain it in the language, but it's very hard to asking a question, because we don't feel close, and we don't feel a good thing to ask a question, because we afraid that he will be angry or belittle us, and something like that. Yeah, because it's very hard for me to understand this lesson, but I think it got better every day. When I first time going to the went to class, it's very uneasy, and then it become a little bit easy, even though it's still challenging for me to understand what he says about about reducing, about omitting, and something like that. If you are really immersed into English language, probably you will know about what I'm saying about reducing and omitting, because yeah, it's kind of in advanced grammar, so it's not basic anymore. But I just learned a little bit of basic about tenses. It turns out that tenses, what I learned when a couple months ago, not really used to this lesson, because we more advanced from that. And I'm still listen some podcasts today, and very nice to listen about podcast from Looks English. Still, I learn still in the yesterday podcast is 1 hour podcast, so I can't listen it all for one day, because it spends a lot of time, and I have doing another things to do, so many things to do. It's very, it's kind of very busy today. I'm glad that I'm already write more 1,000 words about my stories, but it's not finished yet. And there are tomorrow. I'm really hoping a big news from my scholarship, because tomorrow the announcement of who passed the interview a couple days ago, and I hope I'm one of them, but I'm not really sure about it. But yeah, but I still hope the best, or about the interview a couple days ago. And I heard this story from my mom that they will be going to a village back home, because they don't feel that, they just don't really like live in the city, so they just want to enjoy their time in the village. But if next month, like in the August, probably there are durian season there in my village. If you know, durian is kind of fruit in Indonesia. They are very popular here. I think in Southeast Asia, durian are very popular and quite expensive too. And it's not only popular here in Indonesia, but actually in Malaysia and Thailand, and probably Philippines. They very really enjoy this durian thing, because we have many durian tree in the village. So my father and my mom want to back into the village to to prepare themselves to work into the fields to process the durian, because mostly we can't sell all of these fruits, because it's very far from the city. And then durian is not, you can keep it for a long time. It's just only about 1 week, and then because you live in the remote place, so you need to process these fruits into something different. We make it lempuk. Lempuk is traditional food from my village. Not only from my village, I guess it's very Indonesian foods, very popular. And then also make a tempoyak. Sometimes my mom sell tempoyak far from the village into the another island, and the journey into the another island can spend like 1 day, 24 hours. Use a ship, or very traditional ship from woods, not from steel, as we know, as probably you know, if you live in the city and you going to the harbors or going to the ports, you see the ship from the steel. But in my home village, we use mostly wood ship, very traditional. But they use machine, not use sail, traditional people did. But kind of more modern, but not modern enough when we compare into the city. As I said before, that I bought some stuff a couple days ago, and I today I eat brown sugar from the market, not in the market, in the online store. I bought it from online store, and it feel very sweet and it feel very nice. And I think I will going to love to eat this sugar, because it's not only healthy, but it feels sweet. And but of course I need to eat this brown sugar before going to clean my teeth, because when I going to sleep, it's not very good to eat sugar before it, because it's very unhealthy for your teeth. So because to protect my teeth from a bacteria, So I need to clean it before I go into sleep. Yeah. And then what I really want to share with you, I'm not really sure whether I have another thing to share, because it kind of that I'm already talk very much with you, and it's kind of very hard. So I think I need to learn something different to to keep going speaking, not only talking about daily life, but probably about particular issue, which is I'm not really sure what I want to talking about cattle, ranch cattle in the Midwest. As I said in the before, I think it's very good idea to talk about this one. But the problem is, it's not only about the English barrier, but I barely have knowledge about this history. Probably I just want to share about some place in the Indonesia, or probably in another place, or my impression about the place, about the story. Oh yeah, I read a child story a couple days ago when I looking into the internet, from the YouTube, or not from YouTube but from Google, I guess. When I search for a child story, I read about this history of New Guinea. Probably you never hear about this story because the story not really popular, not really familiar with people, including myself from Indonesia. We're not really familiar with a story from our neighbor. This story about the origin of Papua Islands or New Guinea Islands. The story is about a turtle. This tortoise or turtle, I just said a turtle because it's more easier. Then this a big and old turtle will live alone in the Pacific Ocean, and then he think himself and he look at she looked into the sky. She looked into the sky and she had these thoughts that how nice is it to lying on the sand under the sun, under the sun's lights, right? And then he he dive deep into the bottom of the sea, and they took all the sands and rock and stone, and they make it into the going up, and then this turtle make an island from it. And then it turns out when she dip into the bottom of the ocean, she looked into the cave, and in this cave lived a human with dark skin. So this man with the dark skin want to to live outside, and this turtle helped this man live in the islands that already she already built. And then this man, of course, very happy to live in these islands, but then this man feels sad because he feels alone. He needs someone to accompany him in the island. He thought that he is feeling with the turtles, and then the turtle know that the other side of islands there are girls who have a dark skin too. She feels sad that because she want to marry with a man, but no one want to marry with her. And then this turtle going to the neighbor islands, and then bring this woman into the islands, this empty islands. So this man married this woman, and they live together, and then they have many children who live in the island. And this island we call it Papua, we call it New Guinea. But there is this, I don't really know what the New Guinea means, what this origin come from, because I know some origin like Indonesian it come from Indos, and Nessos I guess is kind of Greek words. It means that the islands of India, because in the past, the European country call our nation as Hindia Belanda, Dutch Indie. So this is why probably we get our country name as Indonesia. And then like Melayu, some people call it from the words Malos, which mean mountain. It's Sanskrit word from India, I guess. And then like Indian Ocean, of course, it's from India too. It's very it's not funny, but it's just strange that when European at that moment looking into the Asian people, they mostly thinking all of the people in the East is Indian, even though Indian only the small part of Asia. So they think that we are Indonesian people as Indian islands, but we really have different culture with these Indian people. And also, of course, the biggest mistake is to call the people who live in American as Indian, even though they are really a true American, as we know today. I not really know what they people in the continent say themselves. Probably they don't have a name for themselves because they just live in the small in the not small kingdom, in the big kingdom, but they are very differ from each other, and they don't probably don't know that in the Maya that there are Aztec civilization. They probably don't know each other that there are people who live far North American and the Southern American too in the deep of Amazon. They just don't know that they live in the same continent, so they don't have a thing to call all of these people. So, but the European come there, they call it as Indian, so which is very wrong. But most people still use this word today. So, but it got better now, I guess, because they call it a Native American. It feels better than to say it's Indian. Because when I call to Indian, sometimes we just get a mistake to distinguish these two different things. Another word that I know is Austronesia. Austronesian is kind of people who live in the southern east of our world. Is people who live probably in the east part of Australia as Austronesian people. Probably some New Guinea also part of this, because mostly in the south in the Oceanian, mostly people have this brown color skin, but in the Australasia, they more have darker skin, like Aborigines or people who live in the New Guinea. They have a different skin. So this is why probably they call it Austronesian, because they live in far east south. Yeah, it's very far east south. Even though we are the southeast, but they're far more about it. I don't know what I want to talking again with you, and I feel that I don't really have a good conversation today. I don't really sure because very hard for me to thinking what I want to say. Probably because I feel tired, even though I feel fresh at that moment because I just take a shower before I made this video. But it's just that very hard to thinking to to talk about the idea that I'm not really understand. Yeah, but thank you for watching, and I think I want to say good night. I think I want to sleep, even though some part of me just saying that let's write again, finish the short story, but I'm not really sure whether I really finish it. But I hope that I will finish the story before that 20 July, because I can move into the new story, because I just can abandon the story and then start something new, because it's incomplete. It's easy for it will be better for me to complete the story and then I move into the next story, and then I want to say good night for you.